like to welcome everybody to tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee. Today is May 3rd and it's 6:03 p.m. On our agenda tonight is the acceptance of minutes, budget articles, discussion of wage and personnel amendments, possible discussion with selectmen about across the board increase, reserve fund transfers, the RFP for zoning discussion, possible discussion on asset management, correspondence, public participation calendar as may arise, and then a possible executive session with Charlie Sealegs regarding contract negotiations, sergeants, patrol officers, firefighters, highway, mixed units, police chief, fire chief, and all unions at the Silver Lake Regional School Districts, and the Halifax Elementary School as discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town. Now, Linda just sent out the minutes, so I have not had a chance to review them, and I expect that.
I got them this morning.
No, I got the proposal this morning. I got the agenda for the 4/26 meeting this morning.
Yeah, I got both of them.
Did you?
Yeah, I thought I sent out both of them. That's what's in my sent folder, so I don't know.
It's like I only have the 4/26 profile.
Tom's coming in, just so you know.
Okay, that's good. We haven't started anything really.
Sorry, guys.
Tom, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Did you see the minutes this morning?
I saw the one that was posting. It said minutes, but it wasn't.
Yeah, see, that's what I have too.
I just resent the one too, fixing it anyways with Joe not being the one who seconded the vote, since he clearly wasn't at the meeting per the minutes.
So what we're going to do is, since some of us haven't actually read them yet, I feel that we should probably just bypass the acceptance of minutes and push that off until
Next meeting.
Next week. Anybody?
Sure.
Sound good?
That'd be great.
So the next thing on our agenda is budgets and articles. Have we gotten any new news on
Money?
Or any, yeah, pretty much anything.
Yeah.
I know
that was coming in, just so you know.
Okay. This will work out good.
We have no changes on the revenue front, right, Charlie?
No.
I noticed that the ATM with motions came out today. Were there any articles on there that we were missing dollar values for that we actually have them plugged in that we could actually vote on?
Well,
Not at this time.
Sorry?
Pardon me? Go ahead, Charlie. What'd you say?
I was going to talk about the two articles where you actually got bids in. I believe I sent some information out late today that not everybody probably has seen.
Article 46.
Pardon?
Article 46, is that the fraud assessment?
Right. We got three bids in. The middle one was at about 33.2, I think. Another one was at 50, and another was 178. Obviously, we're not going 178. I don't care if they're the Hall of Fame of audit firms.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be asking for 178,000. The proposals just came in today. What I'm asking, not that you recommend a certain amount tonight, but at least set that aside, in that during the next couple of days, I hope to review the two proposals, not the 178 one, come back to you all and the selectmen with a recommendation. So it's either would be, I guess one option would be not to do anything, but I'm not sure what the point of that doing the exercise has been, if that's the case. But one would be, as I said, for 33.2, the other would be for 50.
Right.
To get an idea. On the ramp, it's a little more complicated in that we got three bids in. We already had set aside $35,000 for the ramp project. The bids came in much higher than that. We're obviously going to need a large chunk of change. I'm going to meet with the architect and with Scott Materna on Wednesday about the project and look at the alternatives, not alternatives, I guess alternates, sorry, is the right word in this case, because it's the ramp, and then work on the actual space that's in front of the door. We're talking about the parking lot side door there. And then to if you're facing the door, there's a space to the right. I call it the porch, let's call it. There's work that might need to get done there. Then there is an alternate that would extend that porch all the way over to the door that comes out of the building over on the old side of the town hall. If you don't know this, the building was built in two sections. One was 1907, and then where the front room, the foyer of the town hall, the front where you're coming in the parking lot, that and everything towards the collector's office and such is new, relatively speaking, 1980s. What the platform would do would be connect all the way to the small door that is by the selectman's office. I'm not sure it's necessary for that. Suspect the platform work by the door is going to be necessary, but it's something I want to meet with Scott Materna and the architect about on Wednesday. If we're doing alternate one, which is the platform, I believe the low bid would have come in, we would have need about 90K more above the 35, which includes a 15% contingency. And that was for both alternates. If we dropped the second one, it would be less than that. As it is, just the first alternate with the second firm in terms of pricing was, I think, 100. We would need 117. So it's obviously an expensive project. Unfortunately, I think anybody who's involved in the construction trade right now, everything is more expensive than it was a year ago, and not just a couple percentage points. It's dramatically more expensive. So again, there'll be a situation, I'll talk with all of them on Wednesday, but work needs to get done. And I don't think it's going to get any less expensive anytime soon. So, but you won't be able to make a formal decision on this until next Monday. But again, you have an idea now of how much money I'd be looking for the project. And the money's there in the unrestricted, undesignated fund balance. So it'll be a go or no go. It's not going to be the problem of where the money's coming from.
Right. Joe, are the prices going to come down anytime like this year?
No, we're constantly putting out literature to our market right now because it's absolutely insane. Can't get drywall compound for 6 months.
Wow.
That's how bad it is right now.
Yeah.
There's a lumber shortage.
The price of copper, metal, and all this entire concrete package is loaded with rebar, which is all metal, which is through the roof right now. I could check the pricing, if I had a set of drawings.
Joe, I can send everything to you.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I can look at our internal division to give me a rough idea of what it would cost, just to see how bad, if at all, we're getting gouged by anybody. These are obviously open shop contractors. My numbers would be union, so I'll be able to gauge it. If you send me a set of documents with the specs or anything like that, Charlie, I can try and run it through my department if they have time to put a number to it before next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that it's so much more, and since we already put money toward it, the people are going to be like asking all about this. Why didn't it get done back then, and all this other stuff. So I want at least to have us, done our due diligence and have all the answers that they might actually, ask us at the meeting. So, okay. Moving on.
Hey, Fred,
Yes.
can we look at a temporary aluminum ramp solution?
Is that an option?
I could ask.
I mean, if we're trying to get through a certain period of time.
Yeah, I mean, if they told me that like everything was going to go back to normal in a year and a half max, I'd just assume wait it out if we could. I'd hate to spend twice what it's going to actually cost this year if it's not 100% a need. So I'm open to any suggestions at this point.
Yeah, I mean, if Gordon, if you're gonna do a temp ramp, it would have to be extremely temp and extremely, I don't want to use the wrong term, but the price of aluminum and metal is ridiculous right now. So, the majority of this is concrete, which, we're not seeing a huge uptick in concrete. It's the rebar inside, but I don't know how much you would save. Yeah, you're definitely going to save some money, but in the long run, it may cost more.
All right, so we can postpone this discussion until we're meeting an hour before town meeting next week.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go over this Article 34, right? We'll go over this one again.
Charlie, just a side note, you're sending them to my personal email. And that's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So we'll tackle this one, fraud risk assessment. Let's circle back. So we had Caesar come in last week and re-talk about the asset management system. I had asked him to do that because of the fact that when I went to the audit for the town, they were talking about that we needed to have the fraud risk assessment, which talks all about asset management. So I had brought the question back up as to whether or not we actually wanted to re-examine our decision on that. So I had Caesar come in and talk about the system, what he's looking to do. I know that Joe and Deborah had a disadvantage because they weren't here last week. Does anybody have any thoughts on whether or not they want to reopen that up for a vote?
Fred, I think it comes down to revenue. We were asked this week to put kind of our priorities together, on what to bring in, and my personal view is rebuilding the 300 reserve and possibly doing an all staff increase would take priority. I mean, we have an asset management system right now. It's a kludge. It's an Excel spreadsheet process.
Yep.
But we are managing the assets through that. I get that we'd probably be more readily passing an audit if we have the system in place. And I do think we need to modernize this stuff. But that's just my take, is that given the conditions and given the other things that we've got on our plate,
yep,
we could pass the audit with what we have right now.
Yeah, the funding isn't through the general fund, so I wasn't overly too concerned about the money there. But at the same time, I was debating, this is just me talking, like, want to invest into a system which, the fraud people might say, no, that's not good enough. I'm almost thinking, are we better waiting for the fraud analysis people to say, this is what we're recommending, and then we come back to this next year and sit there and say, okay, this was the recommendation from the fraud risk assessment that we did last year. This is A, B, C, D, E, F that they recommended. What do we want to spend the money on at this point to address the concerns that the fraud risk assessment came up with? So that's sort of where I was leaning. But again, if anybody has a different opinion, share.
Excuse me, Fred, if I could. I did talk to Scott Materna, the Director of Building Maintenance, today. And I asked him specifically about this asset management. And he said that when he was looking at all his articles, that would be the first one that he would pull. He's not totally sold on it. Yep. And at this point in time, he didn't feel that it was totally necessary. So I thought that was interesting, where he was part of the user on it. And I mean, there are a few projects that data processing is still working on from past articles where you're recommending the digitalization and e-permitting.
Right.
Maybe just be like overloading it.
Yeah, and since we haven't
So I thought
increased
that would be
these as
helpful.
hours, that's the next
Right.
question. It's like we can
Right.
give them all the software in the world, but if we're still sticking them with 25 hours, then are we just paying for something that's just not going to get used? So, so my opinion is that we just leave the recommendation as not recommended. But again, if anybody else has a different point of view, I mean, we could talk about it. So it's everybody else. So, Tom, I figure it sounds like you're sounding like right now. Cheryl, what's your opinion?
I go along with Tom.
Okay, Joe.
Muted, Joe.
Yeah, same as Tom.
Okay, Drew, Deb, NH, are you about thinking the same way, or do you have a different opinion?
I think the same way. It seems like he has something that's working in Excel.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Deb, or are we all set?
She's muted. She's gone, huh?
Okay.
No, Deb, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. I agree. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like we're still in agreement that we're not going to recommend the asset management system. So we won't have to go into a vote for that because that's what our current position is. Let's see here. I don't want to get out of the budget yet. Charlie, do we need to talk about the contract negotiations before we take up across the board increase?
No, I would rather, it's easier logistically for me to, in terms of the meeting, to talk about the, in terms of the Zoom stuff, to handle the across the board. You can talk, because technically you're talking about that as regards to wage and personnel employees.
Right.
Obviously, when you're talking about it, you have an eye on, okay, we're going to also, once we talk about this, we'll probably have to go in executive session and also have a conversation about contracts, but it may not be the same conversation. So it's more about the non-union folks. So you can talk about that now and move on to the union folks later tonight.
Okay. Well, so the next thing on the discussion was discussion of wage and personnel amendments. So do we have any amendments that we need to discuss before we get into the discussion on the across the board increase?
We have no current motions for any of the wage and personnel amendments.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking through it and it
So-
looked like none of them were
Right.
even
Well,
discussed.
Yeah, I mean, you have the ones for moving, I mean, I will get the motions, but basically it's to move as printed in the warrant, though I won't, for these, I won't say that, but you've got the three positions moving out of the graded system. You've got the fire department changes. You've got a uniform allowance for the Board of Health agent. I think those things are basically ready to go one way or the other. The exception is the grade 6 and 7, where I'm still trying to get work done, but I also, in terms of trying to prioritize things, given the conversations you all have had, any material change that would be proposed for 6 and 7 probably isn't going anywhere. If you're not going to be discussed, if you're not, and I don't know what you're going to do or not do, but if you're not discussing a across the board increase for the non-union, my expectation was that even if I came back to you and said, look, I'm making this up, these are not the numbers, but if I said, I need to increase everybody's pay in grade 6 and 7 by $2 an hour, you'd say, well, that's very nice, Charlie. Where's the money coming from? Because we can't even give everybody a pay increase.
Right.
So I prioritized other things on that. I'm still going to be working on that even this week. Not to say that I think we'd have a vote at town meeting, but simply so at least you'll have that knowledge because it's something we've been working on for a while.
Right. Now, have we voted on the stuff on wage and personnel? I remember the uniform allowance, but there's no indication of what we voted on when I'm looking through the warrant here. So I'm not sure we did all of this stuff with the regulate, like for instance, the grade 12 to grade U for the police department, that sort of stuff. Did we vote on all that?
I don't believe that you voted it. You actually discussed it, but then you put everything off that had to do with wage and personnel because you were waiting at that point for the selectmen to hopefully get with you and discuss it all kind of at the same time. So you
Okay.
didn't actually take a vote on it.
So what's everybody's thoughts with regards to Amendment 2? Is it something you want to tackle tonight or just knock this off the hour before we meet at town meeting? I mean, obviously we can't do all of these. Some of them we don't even have. I do remember the health department one. I'm pretty sure we talked about that one.
Yes, you did.
Yeah. And the one on the Group C Fire Department, non-universe, the deletion of that, I think we talked about that. So.
Well, I guess my question would be on all of those, is anybody in need of any other information in order,
Right.
whether it's tonight or next Monday, to make a recommendation outside of the 6 and 7 situation?
Does anybody need any additional information?
No, we got them at, I'm just respectfully, we got them at 1. So I got through honestly half of them. So if, maybe if we keep it open till next Monday, but put to bed whatever we can. Yeah. So
Okay.
no, it's going to be hectic next Monday.
Yeah. I want to make sure we have enough time. Well, Amendment 1 is the possible aboard the pay increase for all wage personnel. We know that the town employees are very important in making, everything run on a daily basis and work well. This town works very good. So we've been asked to reconsider the across the board pay increase for the town personnel. Now, having said that, if we do that, we're also going to have to go back and take a look at the school budget because we'll want to address the fact they're not getting a wage increase as well. So does anybody have any thoughts with regards to adding in a wage increase, considering the fact that we're $80,000 into our cushion of that $300,000?
No.
Do we want to further go into that to add in? What are we looking at? What's the number we're looking at, Sandy?
53.
53, I believe.
Yeah.
So we would be adding another 53 plus whatever the school needs. So we would probably be eating half of what's left in if we were to pursue it. So let's start with Cheryl. What's your thought process in regards to this?
Mine would be no,
Okay, is there a particular reason why you're leaning that way?
because I don't know. I just feel that it'll eat too much into that cushion that we like to have. What happens next year? I mean, we don't know that money's going to be any different next year than it is this year. It could be worse.
Right. Well, that's a point well taken. But again, if you take that position, it's going to be difficult to justify not giving a wage increase next year as well as this year. And it could be worse next year. So that's where you got to, balance.
Yeah,
Sit there and
I
say,
understand, but I have to say, being a senior citizen on a fixed income, I'm not getting a raise.
okay.
You got people on unemployment, they're not getting a raise.
All right. It's a fair point. Joe, what's your thoughts?
Well, I guess my question would be, did they get that raise last year?
They did.
Do you know what
It was a 1.6% raise last year.
And what about the year before?
The year before
They
it was a
did.
2%.
Yes.
So 1.6 and a possible 0.0.
It's possible. We don't know what next year's going to bring.
No, I get it.
I mean, again, we've taken the position that we want to keep the buffer. Next year, year, we could basically sit there and say, you know what, that's not our position this next year.
Yeah,
At which point it's going to be easier to fit in a wage increase if we basically say, okay, we're not going to try to keep the budget because it's just too
Right.
tight.
yeah,
So, next year is next year.
yeah,
It could be better, it could be worse. I mean, it would, people going back out to eat, you would think that, meals tax will be back up. And so you'll think that there's going to be some improvement.
Yeah.
At the same time, I know that we're going to get hit with our higher school line
yeah.
as well. So,
So Sandy, you said the dollar value is 53?
yes.
53,000 was what I came up with, I believe.
What's
Yeah.
that equate to percentage?
I'm not sure. Charlie?
Sorry,
You had it out there.
I thought it was one.
Oh, it was 1%. That's what it's
Yeah, it was
asking. you to
one.
say.
Right. It's a
1%.
1%
Yeah.
increase. Oh, I'm sorry, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And again, too, like if we have contract negotiations and they get wage increases, even if
And I'll have to double check my figures, but I thought the 53,000 included the contracts.
did it,
Charlie?
oh, that would be.
yeah, Sandy, it probably does because we have about a $10 million payroll total between us and the elementary school.
Right,
And I think the 53 there, the town side's a little bit larger than the school side. So I believe the 53 is a 1% for the town's payroll, union and non-union.
But that
usually
doesn't-
when I figure that if wage and personnel gets an increase, union gets about the same. So I always try to include that in the figures to be as transparent as possible.
It
So
was,
then-
But it
sorry,
doesn't
Sid.
include the schools?
Yeah, so Sandy, in last week's discussion, when you said the 53,000, you did say that it included the wage and personnel employees, all the unions. It does not include the elementary school, and Gordon said that the Silver Lake School, to his knowledge, had already put in a 1.6 in their budget.
Right,
So
and it included the elected officials.
that was last week's discussion, yeah.
Right.
So we would have to go 53
Plus the school?
school needs.
Yeah, it's about $100,000.
Yeah, 100.
Give
Yeah,
or take,
That's what I
yeah,
thought.
100.
1%.
How
So
much,
we're like-
how much
That's what
would
I
the
thought. It's
union?
like about half of what we have left.
How much is already spent? Because if the union, well, that's an impossible question, sorry.
Yeah.
Right,
And did what we're talking about, do they get a step raise too? Or it's just the 1% across the board?
Anyone who's eligible for a step increase gets a step increase. So if you're not at the top step, as long as your performance evaluation is satisfactory, then you get a step increase.
And
Which
does
is why
it-
we did have increases in the wage line items, so.
Right. It's already built, the step increases are already in the wage line items have been calculated because the assumption is that they'll get a satisfactory evaluation. So you've already approved, in essence, the step increases for anybody who will be eligible for them.
Okay, so they are getting a raise though. A
Well,
step
some-
increase
Not everybody,
is a
but-
raise.
No, I mean, a number of people are at step 6. They're not going to be getting a raise next year unless they get the across the board increase. I think it's, Sandy, what, roughly half and half, something maybe a little bit less now in terms, because we've lost a few people who are at step 6.
right. I think possibly, yeah, probably a little less than half of our employees are currently at step 6. We only have 6 steps of wage and personnel.
Mm.
So Joe, what was, I know we kind of got off the track. So what were you thinking?
No, I mean, it makes sense, it's a tough situation, but, if you're less than half the personnel that aren't getting a step increase, then it makes more sense to hold off. I can, from my perspective, and, I'm just speaking as just frankly, I would look real hard next year, for sure. If we push off, if we went 2-1-6-0, we'd be, my stance next year would be a lot different.
Right, like if we went 0 this year, I think we definitely have to, whatever we do, try to get it in there. Because you can't, I don't believe in a 0-0.
Yeah, I could say from from an employee perspective, and just being, at that, looking down like that, it's almost, I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but given a 1% increase is almost like, I don't know, obviously every penny helps, I get it, but almost it sometimes says something different. I'd rather tell somebody we don't have the money and that's why we can't do it than say, oh, here's 1%, for someone making $20 an hour, that's 20 cents an hour, it's $8.
Yeah.
So that's almost more insulting than a zero, where you can say, the reason we're not getting is this, we're going to take hopefully a different position next year. We're going to look at it a little bit harder. But, you offer a 1% to somebody like that, it's kind of a tough pill to swallow, more than saying we just don't have it.
Yeah.
So I'm fine.
You're fine?
Yep.
Okay. Tom, what's your position?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta go with. I think both are great arguments. I think if there's any year, the private sector's not getting raises. The citizens, most of whom are private sector employees, they're not getting raises, and a lot of them are unemployed. I think it's just it's the worst employment market. It's coming back fast because that's what I do. But it's just there's just too many people who are going through too much hardship, I think, right now on the employment front, that if there were any year for us to have some rationale for not doing one, it would be this one. Particularly at if total cost is 100, really, if that's what we're looking at. I think we've already dipped in already too much, and that really puts us in a bad position if something bad were to happen.
Okay. Deborah, what's your thoughts?
I agree with Cheryl, like right from the beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Drew, any thoughts from your end?
He's muted.
Not really. I mean,
Everyone.
it sounds like this is like a pretty umbrella article, because it's the wage and personnel for everybody. So whether everyone's getting 1% increase or it's going to be level at 0, I mean, at least, out of the entirety of the budget, if this stuff is not moving a lot, like we're at 1%, 1.6%, something like that. We're not. It's relatively level funded, so I'm not. This can go either way, and I'm not sure I'm going to have like an issue or anything. It seems quite level.
Yeah. Well, I'll just let you know my thoughts. My thoughts are, I mean, I really want to do this. I really do. What my concern is, it's going to be worse next year, and I'm concerned that we're gonna, if we do a raise this year, I don't know how we do it next year, because we're going to be setting ourselves up as a higher number already. So we would go into next year with the raise already in there, and then that would be the starting point. Whereas if you don't have the raise next year, your starting point's now. So to me, like when you have less money, well, at least it's a lower number. I can more easily get it in there. Because I can see the arguments both ways. I am concerned with the seniors. I know the rent's gone up in Halifax.
Rents, taxes.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely comfortable. I mean, I want to, but I'm not sure we have the money. That's what it comes down to. All right, so well, basically I'll make a motion to approve the raise. I just need somebody to second it, make the motion and second it, and then we can do a vote of either yes or no. So I'd like somebody to make a motion to approve our across the board wage increase of 1%.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we're gonna do a roll call vote, yes or no. We'll start with Cheryl.
No.
No, okay. Joe?
No.
No. Tom?
No.
Nope. Okay, Deb?
No.
Drew?
I'll go no. I still need to read all the articles.
And it really doesn't matter what I say, but I will say no as well, just so that we're consistent across the board. So at this point, we are still not recommending the 1% wage increase at this time. So moving on.
Hey, Fred, excuse me. You want to check your chat? Gordon put something on chat. I'm not sure.
Sure, I would be happy to. Yes.
1-6.
Yeah. So Gordon was just making us aware that Silver Lake District teachers have a 1.6% raise for next year and the following year. So when we come back to this next year, we need to keep that in mind that they've already been approved the raise as part of the negotiation of their contract.
Well, what we can do about that.
Yep. Okay, next on the list is reserve fund transfers. Do we have any reserve fund transfers?
Fred, I don't know what you're doing about the other sections of the wage and personnel.
Oh, sure, yeah. Let's go back. Sorry. Let me pull it up first of all. I'm jumping all over the place with these pulling up document after document here. Yeah, let's go through the rest of it. So Charlie, the warrant. So we voted on Amendment 1 of Article 2. Let's go through Amendment 2. Okay, Amendment 2 is to move the police chief from Chapter 35, Section 22.1H, Grade 12, to Chapter 35, Section 21.1K, to Grade U, Unclassified Police Department. Okay, so what's this about, Charlie?
So it's this and the other two that are going to be coming up. Right now, both the police chief and the fire chief are in Grade 12. That if they don't have a contract, that's where they are.
Okay.
Those are that's grossly underpaying them in case for whatever reason we don't have a contract. Right. 2, in the bylaw, if there's an interim police chief or interim fire chief, they're paid 10% less than step 1 of whatever the police chief or fire chief are in the wage and personnel bylaw, because these would be wage and personnel positions.
Right.
So the problem is that if you're going to pay person X as an interim 10% less than what is the step 1 for the fire chief or police chief, it's less than what the sergeants or less than what the captains are receiving right now.
Oh, yeah.
So you would ask someone to get a promotion and take less pay.
Right. That makes sense.
By moving these two positions and my own position out of the graded system, but simply set pay rates for them as just one step in essence.
Okay.
And these numbers are lower than what those 3 positions are being paid right now. Then you would at least set it up so that if for some reason there was no contract, but the position was being filled, you're at least paying them something. I won't even say approximating, but certainly more than what you're paying under current conditions. And then if you had an interim, that interim person is not going to take a pay cut, I hope, by being an interim.
Got it. Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve the amendment to, which we could probably do all 3 at the same time, right? The same thought process.
Could I
Yes.
Just a quick question. Charlie, are these the only 3 positions that are subject to that interim bylaw?
No, every single department head that is a wage and personnel, or the 3 positions that are in essence relatively full-time. The town clerk's not full-time, but the town clerk, the treasurer collector, and the highway, all those positions along with the department heads, if you have an interim in those positions, then that person receives 10% less than step 1 of what the wage and personnel amount is for that position, or for the 3 elected positions, what 10% less than what the salary is set under Article 3 for those positions.
So why would we bring these 3 positions out? Are these just the only 3 that suffer that wage compression issue right now?
Yes.
Okay. And we've got
Anything else?
space on all the others?
There's at least some space. I'm not going to say that it's a huge space, but
Okay.
for these 3, the last time when I came in, the chiefs were at 12 and my position was at 14. That hasn't changed at all. And
Wow.
basically all that's happened in the interim is, 3% one year, 0% one year, 1.5% another year. And we're setting aside what the chiefs should or shouldn't be paid versus their comparable communities. They're being, in their contracts, they're being paid significantly more than what they would be paid under grade 12.
Got it.
I mean,
Thanks.
we're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay, so can we do all 3 at the same time, Charlie?
I don't see why not, as long as you make the motion that way, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so I'd like somebody to make a motion to approve the move of the police chief, the fire chief, and the town administration from their current grades, which for the police would be 12, fire is 12, and Charlie is 14, to grade unclassified.
So moved?
Second,
Okay, let's do a roll call vote then. Cheryl?
yes.
Okay, Deb?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Myself is yes. So those all. The possible amendment to grades 6 and 7 position included but not limited to changes in wage rates and or change in grade. So we're holding off on that one, right, Charlie?
Yes. You don't have anything to vote on, actually. at this
Right.
point.
You want to vote to pass it over?
Yeah. Well, do we want to do that now, or do you think we're going to get anything before next?
I don't know. Even if you do, I don't know that you're going to have an effective vote on Monday. I mean, if you want, I'm just asking, pass over with not knowing that if for some reason I have information for you Monday, I'll present it to you.
Okay. All right, then I'm open to voting to pass over. So would somebody like to make a motion to pass over Article 2, Amendment 5, which is the possible amendment to grade 6 and 7 positions, but not limited to a change in wage rates and or change in grade?
So moved.
Second,
All right, so we're voting to pass over, a yes or no. Cheryl?
yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Amendment 6, did we vote on this one? Because this sounds real familiar. Or did we just discuss this one?
We did this, didn't we? Health inspector.
That's what I thought we did.
I would have to go back and check the minutes because it was done so long ago.
Do we want to just vote on it again just to make sure?
That'd be great.
Yeah, okay. Would somebody like to make a motion for Article 2, Amendment 6, which is to add to bylaw 35.1 Appendix A, the following Group H Health Department Health Inspector Clothing Allowance of $300.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, do a roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Myself is a yes as well, so that passes. Okay, so then we're at Article 2, Amendment 7, as printed in the warrant. So it looks like we're amending bylaw 35-1, Appendix A, Group C, by deleting the following. Does everybody have this up? Or should I read this?
No, I have it.
No.
I don't have it.
Okay, so I'll read it. So deleting the following. Chief's clothing allowance, $575 annually. Detail rate for call firefighters will be time and a half for town of Halifax details only. To advance to step 4, a firefighter must qualify as a pump operator and driver. Fire-related courses, each member of the fire department who attends a fire course sponsored by the Massachusetts Fire Academy shall receive the following compensation for satisfactorily completing the course. 1, mileage for each day of travel to and from the training site at the town of Halifax mileage rate. 2, meal allowance of $5 if the training course requires the firefighter to spend over 6 hours at the training site. A firefighter shall receive payment after she produces a certificate of completion from the Massachusetts Fire Academy. Before a firefighter attends the course, he must obtain approval from the fire chiefs. Okay, Charlie, talk to us.
Right. So the clothing allowance, I think the chief's deleting because it's in the contract. We have a different place in the bylaw about now for the detail rate for everybody. The pump operator and driver, I think he said that no one's qualified for that. And I believe also that they no longer are sending people to the call people. I believe that no one is following that fire-related courses at this point. So we saw no need to continue to have those sections in the bylaw.
Okay. So was this all proposed by the fire chief?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
No.
All right. Hearing none, would somebody like to make a motion to amend the bylaw 35.1 Appendix A Group C by deleting what I read earlier?
So moved.
Do I have
Second.
let's do a roll call vote. Cheryl?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
Self is a yes. Okay, we're at Article 2, Amendment 8, which says add to bylaw 35-1, Appendix A, grade and steps the following. Under administrative and clerical, town administrator, 110,000. Under police department, police chief, 115,000. Under fire department, fire chief, 115,000.
So if you're going to be moving these people to ungraded or the positions to ungraded, you still need to set salaries. These salaries are lower. These are going to be for fiscal 22, and these will be salaries lower than the salaries in their contracts.
Okay, but that's solely just because we're voting the other way.
Right. So, I mean, again, the idea here outside of doing the interims is for some reason there's a day that the board doesn't have a contract for an individual for these 3 positions, then they fall back into the wage and personnel bylaw because they're not union members. So there are salaries set, and we don't have any controversy about how much to pay somebody if they don't have a contract with it.
But the contracts right now are higher than this amount.
Correct. These numbers are for fiscal 22. The amounts in the contracts are less than these numbers.
And these, Charlie, would be for, this would be the index rate that we would do the discount off of for an interim?
Yes.
Okay. So we need them for that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, then would somebody like to make a motion to approve Article 2, Amendment 8 to add to the bylaw 35.1 Appendix A grade and steps the following as previously stated?
So moved. Oh,
Second.
second.
Cool. Let's do a roll call vote then. Cheryl?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Drew?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Okay, so let's move on to Article 2, Amendment 9, which states to add the position of craftsman or a similar designation to the list of positions in grade 8 and to add stipends for various licenses and certifications for municipal and school buildings employees.
This is a weird one in that we're dealing with a position right now that's in the union. There's a question of whether we're going to want this position if for some reason we don't have a union sometime in the future that covers this position, that we want a position with this designation at that grade, so that someone who has the skill set to do this work higher than just a normal maintenance worker would have a wage rate that would be greater than just simply that of a normal maintenance employee. The stipends I didn't send to you because I wasn't thinking about this. And I don't, if you'd like to, I don't know how you want to handle this. I'm not asking you to pass over maybe some more in the sense of table until Monday.
Okay.
And I can provide more information to you later this week, including the information on the possible stipends.
Yeah, that would be the key there because I don't know what the money is, so
Right.
vote on it. Yeah. So if nobody has any objection, we'll just table this one until next Monday.
Yeah, it's fine.
Great.
Sounds good.
Okay. Article 3.
So that's the elected officials article. It's actually your article. And
Yeah.
because in anticipation of no across the board increase, I left all the wages the same on the elected officials.
Right. So we would just make a motion to approve this, correct?
I think you've already recommended it. I think
Yeah,
we
that's
did
what I
talk
was-
about it. It
that's
says
kind of
in
thing.
in the warrant that it's
I thought we did
recommended.
that already.
Yeah, it's kind of
And
weird
since
because
it's your article,
yeah,
I
I'm like,
think we're
yeah,
okay on that one.
okay. 'Cause I'm like we proposed it, and isn't it
Right.
already?
Apparently we agreed.
All right. We did Article 5, Article 6. And then we're getting into more of the contract stuff. So I don't see anything else regarding wage and personnel that we can cover. Would you agree, Charlie?
Wage and personnel's done.
Yeah. Okay. So wage and personnel being finished, let's move on to our next agenda, which is when I went back and asked if we had any reserve fund transfers.
We do not.
Okay. So now let's get into what we've been pushing off forever, is the RFP for zoning discussion. So I believe we have a proposal from, is it Blattman, Bobrowski, and
Haverty.
Haverty? Is that what it is? Haverty?
Yeah.
Learned to actually be able to read my own writing. So do we have any additional information, Charlie, other than what?
I think it's the other proposals. I think it's my Harris.
Yes.
So they called just to chat with me. What they wanted to do was make sure that the finance committee understood that the list that they provided was basically the list based on the list that I gave them in the RFP. It was not so much an a la carte, should we work on X, Y, or Z, but here are places where we think we can get work done that need to get done for the money that we've set aside for this project. It wasn't, for this we'll do 5,000, for this it's 5,000, for these two it's 22,000 or whatever like that. Because they were listening to some of the dialogue at some of the finance committee meetings. They haven't been attending them, but they've been listening to the tapes and didn't want their proposal to be misconstrued. The other thing is they're obviously a law firm. They're not Civic Engagement. As I talked about, the other proposal from Bobrowski had an emphasis, relatively speaking, about spending more time and more resources that were, in terms of funds, on civic engagement. And I said, we can look at that as a good thing. Obviously, the question is whether that's going to be more important than doing the law work and trying to handle the civic engagement more internally here, rather than, again, bringing somebody in from outside.
Right.
In terms of what I saw with the two proposals, that seemed to be, to me, the most significant difference. Both of these firms are very well regarded. I have absolute confidence that in terms of the actual work involved in rewriting the bylaws, if you picked one firm or you picked the other firm, both of these firms are going to be able to do that portion of the job. There's no question in my mind about that. I think the question is whether you want to go with a firm that had more of an emphasis of the civic engagement side, and therefore, I can't say they're going to do fewer projects or fewer areas of the bylaw, but obviously some of that resources, some of the money is going to go to civic engagement work. Whereas with the other firm, it's going to be a little bit less emphasis, at least for the firm, on civic engagement. I think they're expecting, whether it's the finance committee or anybody else, to pick up that part of the work and go with it. In essence, organize however forms we're going to do, and this is all before the planning board gets to a public hearing. Any bylaw change, the planning board has to hold a public hearing, make a recommendation to town meeting. Simply because they don't recommend, or they do recommend, town meeting can do, follow the recommendation, just as town meeting can follow your recommendation, or do something different. But I think that if we haven't gotten to a point before the public hearing at the planning board of being able to have, whether it's planning and zoning and the selectmen and the building inspector and everybody else, non-town officials included, that some parts of the bylaws should get changed. And I'm not talking about multifamily. I'm talking about, because I think that's good. I think both firms recognize that that would be a difficult boulder to roll up that hill. But both of the firms recognize that there are other areas of the bylaw that they think that everybody working together, we should be able to reformat, revise as necessary. Those sections are antiquated. Those sections don't really work right in terms of putting together a zoning bylaw, and be able to bring something to town meeting and have consensus before we end up with a formal hearing with the planning board. So, I think that's where I am right now. I think, obviously it's what I was told today is, this is RFP time for even for law firms, not necessarily just for projects like this, but if towns and cities are thinking of switching from one law firm to another, or at least they're putting out feelers and saying, hey, we haven't looked at everybody for 5 years, for 10 years, whatever. It's time for us to look at who's out there and what they might bring to the table. This is what's happening right now. And so firms, if we're going to engage a firm, and mind you, this is not dependent on this town meeting. The minute you say yes, we don't wait for town meeting next week. We don't wait for town meeting later on this year. The money's already appropriated. So the earlier we can engage a firm, the earlier we're going to start working towards May of 22. With, let's say, a public hearing in March, the formal one, but the intervening 10 months between now and, let's say, March of 22, getting the work done.
Charlie, I was looking at like the listing of open seats, and there's a thing called the Zoning Bylaw Committee.
Which is defunct.
Okay, because it said 0 seats.
Right, well, because the board, back in the day, the board of selectmen had appointed a zoning bylaw committee, and I remember trying to organize meetings, and no one would show up. We never ended up with quorum. So we gave that up as a general thing. And instead, for last winter, not meaning 3 months ago, but the winter of 2019-2020, was trying to just, okay, let's pick multifamily because we know that it just doesn't work right now. There's a lot of disagreement about it. Anybody who wants to show up, any number of planning board members, anybody from the ZBA, anybody from the selectmen, anybody from the general public, come on down. Let's talk about, let's see if we can get some language that those people who showed up agreed to. Well, obviously we didn't. But the zoning bylaw committee obviously was an earlier attempt to try and have people, people from those boards and committees and even, non-town officials do the same type of work. Well, they wouldn't even meet. Forget about get the work done. They wouldn't even meet. So that's one of the reasons why we were ending up where we are right now, is with finance committee having made or brought the article to town meeting, got in the money, and it's before you all.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this whole thing, and I definitely, of course, support getting everything updated. And it is a finance committee's proposal from last year, but I don't want like the finance committee to be solely responsible with meeting the lawyers and everything else like that. I want zoning input. I want planning board input.
Absolutely.
The general. So that's why I'm kind of like, do we look at maybe reopening that up so that we have that group to talk to, in other words, what group is going to be working with the lawyers? I can't imagine it's going to be the full finance committee all the time. We have some committees. So that's why I'm trying to figure out how to work as well.
Well, what you would hope is that the lawyers start meeting with everybody, not just yourselves.
Yeah.
And say, it's going to fall with you all, with input from those interested parties to say, here's a list of the things we're going to emphasize or pick to get some work done.
Yep.
And we want your input on that. But then as work continues, planning, ZBA, selectmen, building inspector, everybody else, here's where we are. Here's, have ideas of how to improve this section or that section, or, they're doing the rearranging. We're talking about, for instance, getting all the definitions into one part of the bylaw, so the same definition works for the entire bylaw.
Correct.
They need to be in the loop on all of that.
Right.
No question about it.
Okay. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask or talk about of the different proposals? They look like they're pretty similar. Civic engagement. And I don't necessarily think civic engagement is something we should ignore. So, I'm all for trying to get the input from, everybody as soon as possible. So
the only thing I just happen to notice, in reading these things all the time, but, Myeris didn't give their hourly rate.
Yeah.
That I can see anywhere, where Bobrowski did.
Mm-hmm.
So you can backtrack into the number and figure out how many hours, right? And actually Bobrowski lined out,
right,
what they were thinking. As far as hours went, when you do the math, you can back into the number. With Myeris, their proposal is similar. The number's the same, but are they $100 an hour or are they $500 an hour? So are you getting more with Bobrowski based on their unit rate in terms of hours than you were with Myeris? That's the only thing I saw.
Yeah. Anybody else have a comment?
I do. Forgive me if I'm not like following this whole thing.
Sure, Deb.
Is this about attorneys that are going to help with changing the zoning of the town, zoning bylaws that will allow the town to be more congested, or?
The bottom line is currently our zoning bylaws, there are, some of them are outdated and not up to date. Some of them are confusing with one section overriding another section. And our process is, it's been a long time since many of these have actually been looked at. There's stuff that we know we need to add in there, like the 5G towers. So we're looking to basically clean up the zoning bylaws so that they're up to date for, 2020 as opposed to 1995.
Okay, I'm just liking this small town life, like, I don't know.
Deb, attorneys are not going to, the attorneys, whoever you folks choose, are not going to come in and say, we're planners. Right. They write law for you based on what the town wants done. So, for instance, they're not going to come in and say, you know what really looks good? We should rezone this area that's residential right now to commercial. Neither of these firms is going to come in to do that. That's that's the job of town officials, that are planning, doing planning work in the sense of, we'd like our town to look this way, or we want to emphasize this type of use versus that type of use. That's planning area where then what you do once you've made that decision is you go back to attorneys and say, we want to be able to do those things. How do we rewrite the bylaws or make changes in order for that to occur? But
so they're not
bylaw.
Okay, so they're not being hired because there is some big plan to change things. And,
I'll give you an
Bill,
example.
like-
So definitions.
Okay.
Definitions are scattered across the bylaw.
Okay.
One of the projects is, let's make sure that all the definitions are in one place and that the definition of word X or phrase Y is the same, whether it's in chapter 1 or in chapter 100.
Yeah. And that's where we're having a big problem right now. I have seen different definitions based on like specific, there'd be like a general use one, and it gets confusing. And then some of them are kind of vague. I've looked at ZBA laws from other towns, and they'll have a definition section. It's like 5 times longer than ours, which clearly spells out everything. And ours are more just, generic blanket statement, which can get us into trouble when, if the ZBA interprets it one way and somebody else interprets it another way. I want to avoid all that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
just need to get updated to today's standards, basically.
Okay. That's more clear. Thanks. Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
No, I think Charlie's data tonight, for me, sort of made it. It sounds like it's almost indifferent which one we go with, as long as we're clear. I mean, Bobrowski won for me on sort of 3 points. First, they named their rate, so we know what their blended rate is on how many hours we're going to get from them. Second, they took the view, they didn't just take Charlie's specifics. They took the view that the whole thing is outdated, and to us, I think it made sense that we need to tackle this in 2 parts. If we get all of that consistency in and definitional integrity in, then when things get emotional, we don't get lost in confusion because people are talking about hard issues and they use that as a way to slow things down. So we'd be able to get on that. And then third, anytime a law firm says anything about community engagement, I'm all for it because they're usually pretty tone deaf. So if they want to spike that out, that was great.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, that was it. That's all I had.
Drew, any comments?
You're muted, Drew.
Just want to see if you have any comments, what you're thinking, Drew.
No comments.
Okay. So does somebody want to make a motion one way or the other on which one to use? Should I make a motion on Blackman, Bobrowski, and Haverty, or do you want me to make a motion on the other one? What are we thinking, people?
Blackman.
Okay. All right. So I'll make a motion to award the contract for the zoning or rewrite to Blakeman, Bobrowski, and Haverty LLC.
Second. Oh,
You need a motion.
so moved. So
Let's do it in a
moved.
second.
Second.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote then. Cheryl,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Drew.
I'm trying to find the article, but yes.
Okay. And myself is a yes. So we will need to actually come together after town meeting and kind of talk about how we're going to proceed, what we want to focus on, that sort of stuff. So we'll probably need some guidance, Charlie, in regards to
I guess the
that.
question is, do you want the firm to come in, not physically, or I assume we're going to still be doing this via Zoom?
Yeah.
If you follow your Monday schedule, obviously we're not doing it on the 10th. I
Correct.
don't know what you all are thinking of meeting the 17th and the 30th, not 31st. 31st would be Memorial Day.
No,
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Right. So
No.
I don't know if you're meeting both the 17th and the 24th or one or the other. And then I could invite the firm in, at least just a meeting and greet.
Okay, well,
Start off with.
Well, let's jump over to calendar real quick since that question just came up. Is there really a need to meet on the 17th after town meeting, or should we wait till the 24th?
I think the 24th is Memorial Day weekend.
Is it?
No, it's always the
No, it's
last.
not.
21st.
No, Memorial Day is,
31st.
It is the
31st.
31st, but
Yeah.
we haven't had the 31st as Memorial Day in a long time that they've
Yeah.
celebrated.
It is this year, though.
So
Are
again,
you sure?
I
Yeah,
don't
it's
know
on
if
the
there's
federal calendar.
so I don't know if there's a lot
Okay.
of things to do after town meeting. I mean, we still have to meet. We start getting into more of a 2 week, quick check-in, any reserve fund transfers, that sort of stuff, until we start getting into some more of the other stuff that we need to do. So, unless somebody feels the need that we need to meet on the 17th, I would recommend the 24th. But I have a thought with that.
You probably want to decompress anyway.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Give me a break. So, how are we? 24th, everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
All right, Charlie. So yeah, we're open to talking with them on the 24th. That'll give me a chance to go back and
We can read it.
yeah, well, reread it. I've read it a couple of times, but it's been a while. And come up with questions that we're going to ask and how we're going to proceed.
Do you want Bobrowski, et cetera, to come to meet with you on that night?
Yeah, Zoom if possible. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. Everybody agree with that?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So if they could come the 24th, that's great. If not, we can schedule something in June if they're not available.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to what do we have left? Do we have any
Correspondence.
Yeah. Do we have any correspondence?
You just have the resignation, the official resignation letter came in from the selectman's assistant on Lauren Carmichael, and then you got the talent bank form for Michael Bennett, if you who put in for the FinCom, if you're interested in having him come in and speak with you.
Yeah. I of course have no problem coming in, having him come in. Obviously, we're not going to do that next Monday, so that would be another thing that we would probably want to handle on the 24th. Everybody agree with that?
Mhm.
Yes.
So again, it gives us that time to decompress and get our heads screwed back on again.
Okay, so you want me to send him an email just asking him if he's available on the 24th to meet with us via Zoom?
Yes, that'd be perfect.
Be great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Is that it for correspondence?
that's it.
Okay, any as may arise things that people want to discuss?
I have a question.
Certainly, Cheryl.
My appointment ends in June of this year. Do I get to stay or am I kicked off?
Do you
or-
want to?
Do you want to stay, Cheryl?
Yes.
It's an IQ test, Cheryl.
Or are you running away?
I didn't know how that worked.
You and I both are up for renewal. I think it's June 15th, right, Charlie? Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what would happen is that, there's a member of the finance committee who is not up for term expiration would come in, meet with the board of selectmen. I think technically, and the board has one vote, the finance committee has one vote, the moderator also has one vote. I believe under those circumstances, I have to go back and check. And it's there to break the tie so that if you're interested, what happened, I think the finance committee sends a note to the selectmen saying, these two people are interested in continuing to serve. We are recommending their appointment. And then there's that joint meeting of the selectmen, with one vote. The finance committee with one vote, the moderator with one vote. Probably, I'd have to look at the calendar, but obviously sometime in June. So either the 8th or the 22nd. The terms expire on June 15th, and it's probably
so the 8th.
necessary to do it on June 8th.
Yeah. So does somebody have the availability on June 8th to call in? They can call in, right, Charlie?
Yeah, it's a little awkward. Gordon has it set up so that at least we can hear people. Not everybody gets to see them, but at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody can come in. That's why I just wanted to open it up. I just need.
We're doing in-person meetings, and by that point, we're going to have increased the capacity in the Great Hall to 25.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy to do it.
Okay. So I guess if we can get that, so we'll have to get that on the selectmen's agenda for the 8th,
Mhm.
do the vote. We need a,
Doing that now.
and then, so Cheryl, do you want to continue?
I do.
Okay, so both Cheryl and I then would be open to renewing our volunteers and just renewing our terms. So who has to type up the letter on that one?
Well, I think you vote to recommend the two of you and have Linda send a letter to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay,
Okay.
a whole bunch of people here right now, so I'll let somebody else make that recommendation for myself and Cheryl and let you guys vote on us. So who wants to take the controls for this?
So I'd like to make a motion to renew Cheryl and Fred's term of office, the Finance Committee, for their successive term when their term ends on June 15th.
So move.
Need a second.
Either Drew or Deb has a second.
Oh, second.
Okay. Do you have the vote?
Joe,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
and myself is a yes.
Cool, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so is there any other correspondence to talk about or as may arise? I think we're good there. So Charlie, do you need the executive session?
Yes. I want to bring you up to date.
Okay, so we are going to be concluding, we're going to be going into executive session to discuss with Charlie Seelig contract negotiations regarding sergeants, patrol officers, firefighters, highway, mixed unit, police, fire chief, and all unions at the Silver Lake Regional School District and the Halifax Elementary School. Discussing strategy will be with respect to collective bargaining in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the town. As this is the last item on our agenda for tonight, we will not be returning to a public meeting. We'll be concluding the finance meeting. So we're concluding the regular portion of the finance committee meeting.
Fred, if possible, if you could invite Sandy Nolan in, if she's willing to stick around.
Sure. Sandy, do you want to come?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So again, we're concluding. We're going to make a motion to go into executive session, right, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay. So I need somebody to make a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. So we're going to do a roll call vote to go into executive session. Cheryl,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Drew,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. So that ends tonight's finance committee meeting, and we're going to be going into executive session in a few minutes.